Okay, welcome everyone to what to expect when moving ground to cloud, GPNav to Business Central. If that's not the webinar you meant to join, I'm not sure what you did wrong, but you're in the wrong place. So excited to talk to everyone today about that move from an on-prem solution to cloud. So we'll be fairly focused in on that Microsoft stack today, but a lot of the topics realistically can carry from other tool sets, right? QuickBooks, whatever that additional tool may be. At a high level, our agenda for today, we're going to talk a little bit about that Microsoft Cloud ecosystem, that solution set. We're going to talk about planning for that cloud move, questions you should be asking yourself, things you should be focusing in on, options for that transition. So what different things can you do to make that move? Some additional considerations, and then we're going to also talk a little bit about a specific client example of the decision making and what they actually did for their process. Throughout, if you have questions, feel free to stick those in the Q&A, and we'll either get to those at the end or try to have someone taking a look at them as we're going. By way of introduction, you've got three RSM team members with you today. So my name is Spencer Coulter. I'm a director in our Business Central practice, so I help lead delivery of the solution set across the US and Canada. So quality of that solution, helping to find the right solution is what I spend my days on. I've got with me a couple of technical team members, so Ben and JC. Both in our application development practice, both have some heavy backgrounds in helping our clients make this type of transition. Interesting fact, we're all sitting in a room together. So I don't know that a lot of our competitors can even pull three people into a room together, but we happen to all be based in Iowa, so excited to talk to you today. So starting out here, thought it would make sense to give just a little bit of RSM background before we dive in. So RSM, one of the largest Microsoft partners in the US, we've got 600 plus consultants that primarily focus on the Dynamics stack. So GP, SL, Business Central, and the finance and supply chain product. We're a member of Microsoft's Inner Circle. You also see down there at the bottom, 1,200 plus consultants that all they do is Microsoft. So I always talk about, as you think about what that means, right? My team knows Business Central, and other teams know the CRM product. Other teams know the Power BI product, Power Automate, right? All these different capabilities that Microsoft is able to bring to bear. We not only have people that can execute on those, but people that's truly their focus job. So I can talk to you about Power BI, bring in the Power BI team for a full solution set. Those consultants are spread across the US. You'll see here, bottom left there, right, the vast array of products that Microsoft has that RSM can assist with. And then those focus industries that we spend most of our time on within that Dynamics practice. As you think about that cloud solution, I think the key thing that I always like to highlight is this is a little bit older slide, but they just become more eye charts as we continue to see products added. But I've always liked this one because it simplifies the concept. It gets that detail across to everyone. So really, when you think about Microsoft's cloud, I think the differentiator is we talk about an ecosystem. So a lot of cloud competitors are talking about one solution, one code base, right? And some of those truly are. Some are a hodgepodge of products that they've put together and skinned to look like they are. I really appreciate Microsoft coming to market with the ecosystem concept. So today we'll focus on kind of that ERP section you see in the top middle, right? That's the Business Central and the finance and supply chain logo. So Microsoft's two cloud ERP solutions. But as we talk throughout the day, the key thing Microsoft is letting us do is really buy into an ecosystem. So maybe I put in my ERP system today, but I need deeper dashboarding capabilities in the future, turn on that additional licensing for Power BI. So really a tool set that lets you buy what you need and then evolve into those next components so that it's a solution that can grow with your business as those needs ebb and flow. Focusing in a little bit more specifically on Business Central, primarily because that's my day-to-day job. So Business Central, as you think about Microsoft's cloud solution, small and medium business versus the F&SC product, which is more enterprise level. So lots of confusion in the market on the Microsoft side of what exactly is this tool, competitors saying it's new. Realistically, it's just a rebranding of a product that was historically known as Dynamics NAV that back in April of 2018 became Business Central. And so it's actually Microsoft's most installed ERP system. So globally, the numbers are a little old there. Globally, about 240,000 companies run the platform, something around 2.5 million users log in for their day-to-day job into this system or a previous version of Business Central. Last one here, not so much to focus on the exact dollars and things here, but really at a high level, wanted to highlight some of the benefits of that ecosystem model. So this is Business Central's licensing model. The key thing I always like to talk about here is it's easy to comprehend exactly what I'm paying for. Right, so it's not a buy this module, get a discount over here. It's Tuesday, we're going to do something else weird for you. Right, it's a very flat model that says, hey, you're buying these modules. You can use or not use any of those components, but by nature of buying, say, that Essentials license, you have access to all the functionality from project management, inventory management, purchasing, sales, financials. And then that ability to scale up to that full-blown production and service management license. And then a couple of additional, more specific use case licenses over on the side. And so when you think about that ecosystem, right, it's a fairly low-cost license, but lets you pick those components you're going to utilize, right? I'm going to do those Essentials licenses, but add Power BI. And that has that simplified licensing model as well, but add CRM. Right, having that capability to pretty easily see what that pricing is going to be and see when you're receiving those bills exactly what you're paying for. Right? It's not hard to say, oh, 8 times 70 equals 560, right? I know what I'm being invoiced for here. Nobody cross-checked that math. I did it as I talked. So if my math is wrong, forgive me.
All right, so why should you go to the cloud? At this point, we've talked a little bit about RSM and Microsoft solutions specifically, so let's dive into some of the drivers and questions that you should be asking yourself while considering a move to the cloud. So the first one, aging hardware. One of the first considerations is the hardware you're currently implemented on. One of the great benefits of the cloud is you no longer must purchase and manage hardware, right? I think that's what a lot of people think about when they think about the cloud. This ends up saving upfront costs when looking to replace hardware, as well as ongoing costs for the maintenance. This also gets into, right, some businesses perhaps have stopped paying their renewals, and so their current system is free. But what you're really doing is locking yourself into an old IT ecosystem that is really expensive to manage and hard to find resources to support. A recent example is a conversation that we were having with a potential client that was locked into a 20-year-old ecosystem because of a specific backend platform. And at this point, right, 20 years old, they were struggling to even buy hardware that could run their software. Another driver is the software end of life. Maybe your hardware was recently updated, but you haven't touched your software for, let's just say, probably too many years. Likely, it would be time to go through the process of updating your software to the latest version, receiving access to bug fixes and new features, but this can be a costly endeavor and potentially requires a skill set external to your business. Upgrading to the cloud instead will prevent these costs in the future due to the continuous update cycle that Dynamics utilizes. Also, vendors are turning their focus to cloud solution sets. So new functionality and capability is potentially added to the cloud, while legacy on-prem solution sets may only be receiving critical bug fixes. Also, when thinking about the cloud, many people get stuck in a sunk cost fallacy, right? So spending a great deal of time and money on your current software solution doesn't lock you out of a move to the cloud. The sunk cost fallacy describes our tendency to follow through with something if we have already invested assets without properly weighing the further cost and effort. All that time and energy spent fine-tuning your current solution may provide some of the building blocks for a move to the cloud. You will be able to take the lessons learned about your business and apply them to a more modern ecosystem. For example, as your business has evolved, perhaps some of the previous time and effort spent on modifications can be replaced by base applications in this new ecosystem. And your knowledge about these business processes is what allows you to see the benefit in the base application. Finally, right, the previous three items have really all centered around cost-saving measures as drivers to the cloud. However, this isn't the only reason businesses are moving there. Businesses don't stand still. Maybe your business has evolved past a platform that was implemented years ago. It works and it's getting you by, but the lack of features and updates is really starting to slow the evolution of your business. Maybe you're not quite there yet, but you want to be forward-thinking and ensure you future-proof your solution set to ensure software is not the limiting factor to your business. Maybe your partner entities have evolved, and you need to keep up or simply want access to best-in-class software. Ensuring that your business can continue to innovate and evolve without being limited by its software is one of the biggest reasons businesses are moving to the cloud. So next up, I had mentioned it on the previous slide, it's the continuous updates. And I think it's one of the big things, again, that people are thinking about when they think about the cloud. It's one of the most important features of using the Dynamics 365 product. This is what is helping you reduce your overall IT professional overhead and always ensure you have the latest and greatest features for your software. What's shown on the screen here is the release schedule, but I wanted to break it down just a little bit more. The tiles are depicting major and minor releases. Major releases happen around April and October every year, with minor releases happening every month in between. Not shown here are the updates to address critical fixes that are released continuously to ensure the best user experience. Most capabilities are made available during major releases. However, some capabilities do get released with the minors. Minor releases are primarily responsible for introducing non-breaking bug fixes. Microsoft also reserves the right to introduce breaking changes, during major releases. Simply put, this means any custom code in your environment may need to be upgraded prior to receiving a major release. Microsoft scans the environments to alert users to any custom code that is not compatible with the new release. And if there's a breaking change, Microsoft will support both solutions for a year while you complete your updates. All major and minor releases can be scheduled to ensure your business is ready to make the upgrade. Sandbox environments, which can be copied from production environments, receive the ability to upgrade to new releases early for testing purposes. You are also allowed to set a maintenance window, and that is what's going to be used to push all those continuous smaller critical fix updates. One last thing I wanted to note that's really cool about at least the Dynamics 365 Business Central stack is experience.dynamics.com, which is a website where users of the platform post ideas for future versions, and then the community is allowed to upvote those and basically determine and tell Microsoft what should be added to the future state of the product. So end users get to have a direct hand in improving the software.
All right, so now that we have talked about why people are moving to the cloud, we're going to review some things you should consider when looking to migrate your ERP. Based on our experience, these are some of the most important pieces to consider when moving to the cloud. For a platform, what other tools are you currently leveraging to support your ERP? Those could be tools like a CRM, expense software, or e-commerce. Now is the time to identify if these tools are meeting your needs. Perhaps there are new options in the marketplace. And then, do you currently have integrations for these tools? With the move to Business Central, you lose access to local file system interactions, but this provides an opportunity to automate more of these system processes. Moving on to virtual considerations, do you currently have a data warehouse or would you like to implement one? For those with an existing data warehouse, how much data do you currently store? Where is it being stored? And is it still providing value? With the move to Dynamics Business Central, you lose the ability to directly access the SQL database. This means data warehouses that were running stored procedures to replicate data SQL to SQL will need new solutions compatible with the cloud. Losing this access is part of what allows continuous updates to occur and provides an opportunity to find more efficient ways to access your data. And then how quickly do physical actions need to occur? Are you printing reports and labels frequently? Because heavy printing applications and/or label printing can run up against interaction speed problems. And then does your business use a lot of handheld devices? This could be printers, warehouse scanners, or scales. And does your current solution integrate these handhelds into your ERP? Business Central has add-on products, also called ISVs, that can handle this, which we will touch on a bit later. So now let's talk about considerations around data in your current ERP. Or data migration. What do you need to take into the cloud? Think about how much historical data you need and number of companies. The amount of data you take with you affects the timeline of your upgrade to the cloud. And then environment size. How big is the environment? Database size grows by user license. So do you need to consider buying more data? And then environment scaling. How quickly do you expect your environment to grow in size? How many records are you transacting a month? 1,000, 10,000, even 100,000? If you find yourself transacting in high volumes, this may be a place to consider optimization above and beyond the base product. Then lastly, record generation. How are records entered into the system? If users are hand keying data in, there are other alternatives. We could do integrations with your other tools that can help avoid duplicate data entry. Or perhaps you have existing customizations that can handle data uploads. And another thing to note about Business Central is that it allows users to edit records through Excel. So for environment customizations, they have always bridged the gap between what your ERP could do and how you wanted to run your business, but they can also add complexity when looking to upgrade to the cloud. For the first section, this is a great time to review customizations and identify how the business process can be replicated or upgraded into Business Central, which leads us into the base code section, because what was once a customization could now be base functionality within Business Central. And with Microsoft providing continuous updates, they are always introducing new and improved functionality. And then diving into extensions, what is this extension-based development model? Basically, all custom code written against Business Central will become an extension that sits entirely outside Microsoft source code. Then because all custom code is separated from source code, it allows Microsoft to continually upgrade their source without the need to merge custom modifications, which was previously one of the most complex parts of upgrading. And then if you have experienced technical staff that support your ERP today, some training may be necessary to ensure a smooth transition for support and future upgrades. And then for add-on products, these are ISVs, and they also only have access to developing an extension. This helps ISVs be more plug and play. ISVs have replaced what used to require one-off custom development. And because ISVs are also developing using the new extension-based model, they will continually upgrade alongside your Business Central environment. And then lastly, integrations. So are you using integrations with your ERP? For those without, integrations are a way to automatically sync data across different systems so users don't have to spend as much time on data entry. Now let's talk about how you can improve your ERP since your last implementation. How has your business changed since your current platform was implemented? Perhaps previous customizations are no longer used and don't need to be implemented in the cloud. You might find yourself saying, we're doing things the way we always have, but you might find a different way in Business Central. And then which areas have the biggest opportunity for a future platform? What other tools are in use today that require duplicate data entry? This is a good time to consider an integration to Business Central that previously may have been cost prohibitive or impossible. And then how much history do you need access to? Think back to the questions we talked about earlier about environment scale. Do you need a historical data warehouse with Power BI? Along with history, how many companies will you need in Business Central? The number of companies will directly impact the environment scale. Most of our discussion here is around the thought process and decision-making for cloud, but stepping back for a minute, with a Microsoft Cloud ERP, you are buying into not only the power of the ERP itself, but also the entire Microsoft ecosystem. This means as your business evolves, Microsoft's cloud platform evolves with you. The idea in the ecosystem is to take advantage of the pieces you need when you need them. For example, many of our clients are using Power BI to build deeper dashboards across a wide array of systems without integrating. Alongside that, many may be using the included licensing for Power Automate to execute integrations and automate detailed approval workflows. As businesses evolve, they may move beyond the base ERP, CRM components and move into the customer service and sales tool sets inside the broader Dynamics 365 ecosystem. We at RSM are constantly looking for more opportunities to extend the tool sets with our RSM IP, which is focused on the industries that our clients are in. As a recent example, when the supply chain started melting down, we added IP for the platform around container management to give our clients with significant footprints abroad better visibility and tracking of their container status throughout the shipping life cycle. Now that we discussed the various considerations when upgrading your ERP, let's dive into your options for getting into the cloud. So you might be asking yourself, how do I get to the cloud? Well, there are multiple options to upgrade your current ERP solution to Business Central. Picking the right path to the cloud depends on the answers to the questions discussed on previous slides. In the following slides, we are going to do a deeper dive into each of the options and discuss pros and cons of each. The first option is a Microsoft Cloud migration. For users that are on an old NAV implementation or a Dynamics GP implementation, Microsoft has provided a cloud migration tool natively within the cloud offering of Business Central. This option is generally used for implementations that don't have a lot of customizations. Any customizations that are required will need to be rewritten into Business Central's extension-based model. The older the version of NAV, the more complex this tool becomes. This tool requires that your data is upgraded through multiple hops to get to the latest version of on-prem Business Central. Each hop requires a full install of that NAV version, data validation, and process validation that the version of the hop you're on works as expected. This process involves heavy interaction with the client and RSM teams. And on this slide, this is an example of one of the more recent upgrades we've done for a client for us. Moving on to the second option, which is RSM Ground to Cloud. For a GP to Business Central upgrade, RSM has a tool set to run against your GP database to validate the system is fit for this process. After this, a 3-year contract is defined to minimize upfront cost and spread that left to a number of years. During this discussion, any additional extensions of capability can be discussed as well and embedded into that longer-term contract. Generally, this initial lift to BCE takes about 4 to 6 weeks, including conversion and training to rapidly be able to start utilizing and evolving in the cloud toolset. The last path for upgrading is actually a re-implementation. This path is the best for heavily customized and/or older implementations where there is likely code no longer used and significant process changes that may have occurred over time. As an organization, this lets end users re-buy into the platform and take ownership of how it is implemented. This allows a switch to using industry standard processes everywhere possible and forcing a redevelopment of unique processes. Key things during this process from an RSM standpoint is that we view ourselves as a question first, second, and third, then develop organization. We also view ourselves as a heavy education organization. Our functional and technical teams consistently challenge our clients on why we're developing something that the front end functionality can handle slightly differently rather than immediately going to code, like many of our competitors. In our methodology on this slide, there is a heavy tint to maximizing client time in the system and comprehension. Early on in the project, sample data from the existing system is pulled, and we walk through each process in the system to discuss where things will and won't work. Users are generally in the system in a matter of weeks, starting to navigate and comprehend how various functions work. From these early sessions, we generate solution verification documents, which are the configuration we will follow for the rest of the project. Things will change as everyone learns more, but it gets early buy-in from both sides that we know what the solution is. In the middle, the key is configuration workshops, in which we're working together to configure the system. This allows a deeper understanding after go live, as those error messages arise of why we turn this on, but not that, etc. From there, we are converting data, adding customizations where needed, and validating the system is performing as expected before we get into the final deploy phase. In this phase, we're doing final validation, and opposed to the parallels of the past where everyone did their job twice, we do a focused exercise called a mock go live. During mock go live, we do a mini go live, cutting data over and validating processes one last time before a no-go decision. Once live, our teams generally support you through the first month-end close before you are fully in our support organization. To that point, regardless which of the options we talked about from an RSM perspective, you work with our support organization or manage application services, also known as MAS, throughout the process. This team then supports you after go live in both break-fix questions, as well as minor tweaks and additions to the system so that it continues to function and expand with your business into the future.
All right. So next we thought, right, we've talked about why go to the cloud. We've talked about some of the ways to get there. And we've also talked about some of the questions that you should, maybe have some answers ready as you get ready to go to the cloud. We thought we would tie all of that together with a recent client example of somebody that we helped get to the cloud in Business Central. So the client in question was using a NAV environment with many years worth of customizations. Many customizations were developed in-house by people no longer with the client, and some customizations had been around long enough that it was hard for users to distinguish between base code and customized functionality. And that meant it was a little hard for us too at times. To assist in the decision-making process, we looked through the existing code base and had conversations with the client to walk us through their business processes. We asked many of the same questions outlined during this presentation to identify the right solution. After the analysis, it was determined that due to the highly customized nature, as well as multiple ISV offerings that covered previously custom processes, we would re-implement this client into the cloud. We also gave specific focus to analyzing what customizations needed to stay and what customizations were no longer needed, forcing the individual business units to rebuy into their need. All right, so during the reimplementation, I wanted to talk just on a couple of the bigger challenges. You'll hear some callbacks to some of the things brought out on the other slides. So at this client, one of the biggest challenges was their data warehouse solution. So they had a large homegrown data warehouse that was previously tapping directly into the NAV SQL tables to replicate data. As mentioned previously, moving to the cloud meant no direct access to SQL, which required a new solution. The solution would need to replicate 75 plus tables into the data warehouse efficiently. The transition also required a mapping of the tables that changed in later versions of NAV or Business Central, or even custom tables that would now become ISV solutions. Another problem that this client faced was their subscription billing model. So part of this client's business is doing software subscriptions. With their current NAV environment, they were forced to manually keep track of and bill for recurring subscriptions that could last for years. Alongside Excel sheets, there were also customizations to assist in accurate record keeping for this process. This was an area of focus because there was room for significant improvement during the move to the cloud. These customizations were exactly the sort of things identified during the analysis that we knew didn't need to be replicated into the cloud. And then the third struggle and challenge that this client had while moving to the cloud was local system access. So there were some customizations, again, written into their NAV environment related to email functionality and system file management that were going to be difficult or impossible to reproduce in the cloud. These processes were critical to the continuation of the business, but in the cloud, you don't have direct access to file systems as ERPs have had in the past. So what were some of the solutions to these challenges? So For the data warehouse, first of all, we determined that keeping the data warehouse as it stood today was the best option based on the well-developed nature as well as the overall number of tools that were connected into the data warehouse exterior to the ERP. This would mean that we would need a new process to get data from the cloud into their data warehouse. We accomplished this by implementing an ISV that was able to natively connect to Business Central's web services and surface the results of those queries into a linked server in SQL. A new extension was written to surface efficient web services for SQL, and that's how we populated the data warehouse tables. This allowed the business to continue using the data warehouse without much of a rewrite. Fortunately, the solution for the subscription billing was an ISV identified in Business Central that had plug-and-play functionality to handle subscription billing. The extension out of the box didn't do everything the client required, but they were able to reach out to the publishing company and work with that company to get new requests and features into the development backlog to be added in future releases. This was just one example of a custom or outside the system process that was replaced with a third-party solution. Many more were also identified and implemented successfully. Finally, was the solution to their loss of local system access. So Power Automate was quickly identified as the solution to these items. We were able to quickly and effectively enhance their email functionality and write customizations in Business Central to export files into the SharePoint they were already maintaining and using. This is a great example of leveraging the Microsoft ecosystem by tying their ERP into software they already owned and used. Power Automate was then leveraged to automate more business processes like workflows, notifications, and smaller integrations. After addressing some of the biggest challenges facing this client as they re-implemented into the cloud, we were able to work on the remaining customizations that needed to be retooled and workshops to set up their data.
So what's next? As obviously a lot of information there, right? And so as you think about what are those next components, a couple things. First, if you have questions, feel free to stick them in the chat. I have seen a couple come through there. Several of those showed as anonymous. So as we get finished here, if you could make sure you shoot an email to Matt Wagner with that question as well, just so I know who to follow up with. So a few slides here as we get to the end, and then if anyone has questions, we're on about a 20-second delay, so type them now and we'll see them when we finish the slides here to continue the conversation. But feel free to screenshot if you're fast with your phone, right? Grab those QR codes. We'll stop on the last slide that has a few different links for you. But what are those things that we can do now if we've got some interest in making this type of move? So at a high level, we can do an assessment, right? So if you've got an environment heavily customized or a lot of different processes or curiosity if that ground to cloud option works for you, right? Reach out. You can contact Matt Wagner. We can get connected to go ahead, run through your current environment, take a look at some of the details, some of those questions that we asked throughout this deck, and give you some advice on what that correct path forward may be for your business. Alongside that, same email address to reach out to. Matt'll help connect the dots for everyone. But key things, if you're looking to get a demo lined up, right? Let's have that conversation, do some discovery so that we can make sure when you're looking at a demo, it's showing things that are applicable to you and your business. We try to pretty quickly give you some budgetary information in any of those options so that you can make the right decision that it's cost effective for your business and you'll get the benefits that you need out of a new solution set. Last slide here, just again, wanted to have some QR codes to highlight some of those details we've maybe hinted at throughout. So the one on the far right there is, again, just emailing Matt. So feel free to utilize that. The one on the left there will actually take you to the experience.dynamics.com site that Ben mentioned earlier in the deck. And so that site is where you can add ideas for the product. and other users vote on those ideas. And then you'll see an administrator in that site who's actually responding to the ideas saying, yes, we're going to get this in the roadmap, or yes, this is going to be in the April release, or this is a terrible idea, but at least I told you it's a bad idea, right? And all sorts of those interactions with other end users, with partners, as well as with that Microsoft team. And then Ben also hinted at it, right? That middle QR code will actually take you into the release notes for the spring 2022 release. So that's actually, we're currently getting those notifications from Microsoft. So if there's going to be code that's blocking anything, that's going to be that detail of what's coming out with the April release of Business Central. I think the cool thing is you kind of cross compare it. If you spend a little time in that site, it's not just Business Central, right? You'll see that along the left side of that page, there's links to all the different platforms and release notes for that entire ecosystem from there. You'll also see, if you drill into some of those specific release details, you'll actually see callbacks to that experience website. And so they'll actually call out in the release, hey, this is where this idea came from. So there's several. If I've done a demo for anyone on here, you've probably heard me reference throughout some of those demos, hey, RSM got this added to the system. We didn't do anything fancy other than we got that out on that experience site. Microsoft accepted that idea, and it was then released into Business Central and one of those historical releases as a part of that core solution going forward. With that, we'll open it up to any additional questions that may come through. And Ben, it looks like, can you talk a little bit, I think, or JC, I think you guys highlighted an example of upgrading through that NAV lifecycle. Can you guys talk a little bit more what some of those factors were?
Yeah, so what you're referencing is the cloud migration tool that Microsoft provides natively in Business Central. And it might seem like it's a little too good to be true, right? Oh, it's just going to suck my data into the cloud, all of my tables. This is wonderful. And that is true. I worked on an upgrade. I really think it was an upgrade at this point for a large franchisor a couple years ago that we used that tool. And yeah, exactly as we kind of outlined on that slide, right? We had to have all of the versions of NAV ready, all the way to the latest version of Business Central on-prem, because really what the cloud migration tool is doing is connecting a Business Central on-prem environment to a Business Central SaaS or cloud environment, right? So you have to get your data upgraded all the way through to Business Central on-prem. This client specifically went through and used the cloud migration tool. They were identified for that because they had only, I think it was 2 or 3 large modifications to their environment that were already going to need to be rewritten into that extension-based model that JC talked about. So we weren't going to save any time re-implementing there. We were going to have to rewrite that anyway. And the amount of custom data that they needed moved was very minimal. And so really what we actually did there was sucked the data out of SQL, didn't actually upgrade that data, and pushed that data back into the cloud once we were there and had the new custom tables in place. It went really smoothly. We ran that cloud migration tool overnight. I think it took 5 or 6 hours to run, but at this point, that was a couple of years ago. I'm guessing that it would be even faster today.
Yeah, I think the key thing to call out there for the GP companies on the line, that tool set does exist for GP. It's not as all inclusive, right? So there's a reason that RSM's built that ground to cloud offering. That brings a lot more forward from a historical standpoint, from a setup, from a management of the environment standpoint. So that NAV to BC connection, very, very clean, takes all the tables and moves those to the cloud. GP a little bit more limited in some of that history and how some of that migrates up to that cloud solution set.
I should also add, client has been very happy on Business Central for the last couple of years. Been a very nice client.
Gotta
Gotta plug it.
So, Perfect. Well, I am not seeing any more questions. So with that, we'll go ahead and wrap up here. Appreciate everyone taking some time out of your days to learn a little bit more, right? Figure out some of those questions to be asking internally and externally, right? Make sure you're asking your IT department or your accounting department, depending on your role, and trying to figure out, right, is this the right move for our business? Thanks again for attending, and we'll end it here.